4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 had cleared the towers.
Looking at the Falcon 9 powering its way through the low atmosphere as it heads into the parking low Earth orbit. First stage continues to burn under the power of 9 Merlin 1D engines. We're already through the throttle down and throttle up phase. Coming up to transonic, let's listen in. Currently, Falcon 9 has gone through the supersonic speed transition, what we call going transonic. This is also the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the Falcon 9, where the loads on the vehicle, a combination of the density, the atmosphere at the lower altitudes, and the speed of the rocket, create the greatest loads on the Falcon 9. We've just heard the call in that MVAC-D chill-in looks good. We've begun passing liquid oxygen to the turbo pump on the second stage engine, getting that turbo pump cold as we get ready for ignition of the upper stage, coming at about T plus 2 minutes and 44 seconds. We're going to listen in. Major activities coming up now. At 2.5 minutes into flight will be main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation and upper stage engine ignition. Let's listen in.
This is the OSM.
You hear the cheering. The upper stage engine is lit, completing the sequence of shutdown of the first stage, separation from the first stage, ignition of the upper stage engine as we continue on into the low Earth orbit. That'll be the first of 2 orbits we're headed for tonight. The first somewhat circular low Earth orbit. Then after a coast period, we'll go into what is essentially a large egg-shaped orbit, the geostationary transfer orbit, which will take the Falcon 9 with the JCSAT-16 spacecraft to an altitude of about 36,000 kilometers. You can see the upper stage nozzle. Here comes fairing separation.
Fairing separation,
And we have fairing separation. With that, let's talk to the team down on the floor.
And as the second stage is carrying the satellite now free of the fairing up to that low Earth orbit, or the beginning, that initial low Earth orbit before moving to GTO, the first stage is heading back towards the drone ship. Now, occasionally people think that a drone ship landing is harder than a land landing, and that's sort of true, but not for the reasons they think. A low Earth orbit mission, which can return to either land or the drone ship, is easier than a geostationary transfer orbit mission, which can land only on the drone ships. That's because a GTO mission requires a lot more speed than a low Earth orbit mission, and that means it requires more propellant. It even gets a little bit trickier than that, so we've got a nice animation to show you what's up. Here we have a picture of the Falcon 9. We zoom in on the first stage. It's got liquid oxygen propellant on top and RP1 kerosene fuel on bottom. And as it burns through each of those propellants, the thrust that's produced is more or less constant. But it's harder to move, or harder to accelerate when it's heavier. Just like a pickup truck will accelerate slower when it's towing a lot behind it. So when you burn 20 seconds worth of fuel at the beginning of the flight, you've only added about 200 kilometers per hour to your speed. But 20 seconds worth of fuel when the rocket's almost empty, just before main engine cutoff, adds more than 2,000 kilometers per hour to your speed. So, sort of perversely, it's really the fact that we don't have much propellant left that allows us to reach the speeds required to reach GTO. And if you don't have much propellant left, of course, then you can't do a long re-entry burn to minimize the re-entry forces on the vehicle, and you get much less of the control that comes with a longer single-engine landing burn. So it's really the GTO landings that are hard, not necessarily whether the first stage is landing on a drone ship.